Very good morning to you.
Morning.
Where do we start? Every day, where do we start? I mean, just, even when there's international news, it's just embarrassing for our country. But, I mean, shall we start with Mahmood, the Home Secretary?
Yeah.
It's very difficult. I can't decide what I think about her. She seems to be pretty bright and knows her stuff more than, I mean, some of them go on air and you're like, good grief. I mean, how did you even, move out of kindergarten, let alone, get into government? But, she came on a show and she said a lot of the right things. But then, she's saying a lot of that things about the pro-Palestinian marches. But then she went on one of them. So it's all a bit difficult. But she's speaking at a conference and saying, look, Britain has lost control of its borders. And crucially, she's saying the public rightly expect that the government will be able to determine who enters their country and who must leave. And today in this country, that is not the case. I mean, it's quite a revelation from a Labour Home Secretary, no?
It is. It's not what we've heard previously from Labour Home Secretaries, but it is also stating the obvious. So you think, OK, I give her marks for actually having the guts to go out there and say it, but it's all very well to say these words that we've all been saying for quite some time. What is she going to do about it?
I mean, she hasn't been in the job very long, to be fair, but she was Justice Secretary. She knows about how all this stuff works.
She does.
Well, she says it's international cooperation and it's not turning it back. So it's not, it's cooperating to, reform the European Convention on Human Rights and how it's interpreted. It's, or just simply say, you're no longer allowed to make this ridiculous interpretation that someone's right to have their kid eat the chicken nuggets they want trumps our right for us not to have a foreign criminal in the country. That's not even up for discussion. I don't even know why that takes a nanosecond of conversation. But international cooperation, she says, is the answer, working together rather than just pulling up the drawbridge. I mean, are we going to get that much cooperation? Because frankly, I mean, these other countries are hopeless at controlling their borders as well.
Well, when you look at who we have to negotiate with, the largest continent there being Europe, and they're not having such a great time either. Their borders are pretty porous. The Schengen zone doesn't work very well, which is why
that's going to be over in the next few years.
It has to be. I can't see that's going to continue whatsoever. So who else are you going to negotiate with? Yes, I do agree that you have to work internationally. You can't just shut down conversations. But why is that the main gist of her conversation when you should be looking at what we're doing in the United Kingdom?
And again, the whole point of Brexit what was that we were in control of our own borders.
Absolutely.
I mean, and here's another stat. Migrants make up 1 in every 6 recipients of universal credit. Most recipients of universal credit, yes, although you can get it while working, most do not work. I mean, it's even people who get it when they are working, stop working. It's almost like they can get something for free. They don't carry on working. I know, it's a mystery why they would do that. But almost 1.3 million migrants were given the benefit in July. That's up from 930,000 just 3 years ago. I mean, the Tories have said they're going to bar foreign nationals from claiming universal credit and other benefits. I think Reform have said the same thing, have they not? It's difficult to keep up with the barrage of announcements we've been having.
No, that's true.
But we are, £141 billion for welfare this year. 141 billion quid. 141 billion quid we don't have, by the way, just in case you were wondering. And the bulk of that goes on universal credit because, Ian Douglas-Smith moved it all onto one benefit.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of those 1.3 million migrants are people who are EU citizens.
Yes.
Who are allowed to stay here. But again, this is the thing. We were told, were we not, that we were benefiting from this mass EU immigration. And again, when they did the actual numbers and people were out, can you apply? You've been here a while, but we just need to know you're here so we can register you and you can continue to stay here after we left. Yeah. And they thought they were about 3 million. They were about 5 million. We didn't even know how many were in the country.
No, and
didn't even know.
No, and that's the real problem. And the majority of them would have been working. So if the majority of them were working, why on earth is the claimant count for universal credit so high? Because surely if they're paying their own way, they don't need to top up with universal credit. We were told that these people were a boon to our society, so that's why we needed to welcome them.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. I do think we also need to get the correct figures from the DWP because there is some argument about
Work
the
and
data.
Pensions Department, yeah.
Yeah, there is some argument about the data that comes over. You've got this horrible foreign-born category.
Yeah.
Which is me.
You say horrible. She's not being... It's complicated.
It is complicated. The descriptor is not
but
right.
We would think, well, Claire's British, but you were born
Absolutely,
where?
but I was born in Cyprus.
Yeah.
But I am a British citizen, I've got a British passport, my father was in the army.
You were a British citizen from birth?
Absolutely.
I do think that's crucial. British citizen from birth. Have you had to change your nationality or are you... I mean,
no. No, and I haven't. And it was sovereign territory. It was a sovereign base. So I think
it's good to know we could figure out. No, we can't. But no.
I've got nowhere to go, but I wouldn't mind going to Cyprus. It's quite sunny when you look at the weather outside. But I think that we need some correct data to come through. And also, why are people being allowed to claim universal credit?
Again,
I just don't understand.
I just find it. I mean, people say, why shouldn't these people, if they need help? Again, if I moved to America or to France or to, Australia or anywhere else, I moved those countries and I had a job and I was allowed on the basis I was working and I was allowed there legally, and then I lost my job, I couldn't get another job and I needed help. I'm not sure I would expect the taxpayers of any of those countries to fund my life. Maybe you could say, like, you might be entitled for a few months, but maybe you should be saving up some money for the time in between. And if you can't save up money, it's because you're not earning enough money to be able to support yourself. So I'm sorry, thank you very much, but move on.
Yeah.
I don't understand why people think this is complicated, why they think it's xenophobic or anything. Sorry, you don't get... But this comes down to that fundamental thing. We've got people on the left who think that there's no such thing as borders or the nation state, apart from for Ukraine. They believe in that. It's very confusing.
Yeah.
And they genuinely seem to believe that anyone can live anywhere. Well, good luck with that. How's that working out for you? Because it's not working out very well for us. What about the illegal migrants we're trying to get rid of? Not just the man who made those threats to kill Nigel Farage, sentenced to 5 years, will only serve 18 months. He wants to go home to Afghanistan. Well, bye. I mean, let's all, seriously, we can all club together and pay for your ticket, mate. I'm absolutely willing to put a tenner in for that one. Absolutely outrageous. And it's extraordinary, by the way, how little coverage that has had in the mainstream media. The leader of the political party that is ahead in the polls, a man who has played a major role, probably the most famous politician, probably more famous than Keir Starmer in this country, certainly abroad. Donald Trump couldn't remember Keir Starmer's name at that summit in Sharm el-Sheikh. But the leader of a party who massively influential in terms of Brexit and things, and in terms of Boris's election as well, he's on all the polls, and a new mega poll suggesting he had the biggest majority ever. Tories down to 7 MPs. I mean, look, a lot can change in the next few years, but nevertheless, we are looking like the man who's odds-on favourite to be the next Prime Minister of this country. And a migrant films himself making TikTok videos, threatening to kill him. And it barely makes a down-page story. This is huge. Oh, but it's Joe Cox. And I'm sorry, but I think the anniversary today of David Amos's murder, the Tory MP, who was murdered by Islamist, again, migrant, terrorist. I mean, I'm sorry. We have an issue here. It's a matter of luck and time that this man has not murdered Nigel Farage. And people don't seem to, the authorities don't seem to really care. I'm stunned this guy even got charged.
Yes, so was I, when I was sort of watching the coverage of the case. And I think it's a testament to Nigel Farage for pushing it to become such an issue and to stand there and talk so honestly about...
To turn up at the case.
To turn up at the case and talk honestly about how it affected him. Because I think a lot of people view politicians as a character and say, well, he shouldn't matter, he's probably heard worse. Well, that doesn't matter. Yes,
he has
we've all heard
24-hour
worse.
security.
He does, and he has that for a reason. You're not given security for nothing. So I think that we need...
for years, your government, the government you worked in, wouldn't pay for his security. And he had to have, other funders pay for generously funding.
I was going to say, but I think there's a difference
which is
when you're
outrageous
an MP as well.
He was a public figure, and he was being threatened with. He was facing serious, realistic death threats for being a major political figure in this country. I think we should provide. In the same way, I think we should provide security for Prince Harry. I just think we need to provide
you and I differ with that one.
No, I think we should absolutely.
But I think that
from his wife mostly.
Yes, that goes without saying. But I think that we need to take MP security seriously. I think that we also need to take threats by people who shouldn't be in this country much more seriously. Because you think if that had happened to a Labour MP, we would have heard about this time after time.
Talking about it in the Commons every single day. All threats from some little Egypt Oxford University student. At Balliol College. Seriously, do you know how hard it is to get into PPE at Balliol College, Oxford? I mean, you're literally the elite of the elite. And these people are that stupid. We've been workshopping a chant about putting Zios in the ground. I mean, it's just extraordinary. And again, I Met Police messaged me back after I tweeted them, going, we found him. People on Twitter have found him. Off you go. And, you know, again, someone writes a tweet you don't like, which has not even got anything remotely, threatening in it, and six of you turn up on the door. Armoured police meeting Graham Linehan off a plane from America. I mean, I'm sorry, at Heathrow Airport. You know where he lives? He lives in Balliol. He lives at Balliol College, Oxford. I can give you the address. It's really easy to find. It's just extraordinary. This guy, we need to make an example of him, and we need to start going after every single one of them. And no, it's not a free speech issue.
No.
Your free speech doesn't extend to making death threats about people. It just doesn't. It's not that complicated. Anyway, if we did manage to deport, I would love to deport that student, frankly. Improve the IQ of the country overnight. If this horrific, nasty little creature who made threats to Nigel Farage, the one with the AK-47 tattooed on his cheek, I mean, as we were saying yesterday, unlikely to have got that engineering job that he was hoping for, because, they're all engineers and astrophysicists. But he would be having a wonderful time in a deportation centre near Gatwick Airport, at Brook House and Tinsley House, because he could get art and craft classes, IT lessons and even English lessons. He can play board games and gets free access to the gym. £260 million Serco contract. Brilliant. Brilliant. We're paying for that. Why are we giving people art and craft lessons or even English lessons when we push them out of the country?
I agree with the English lessons. We don't need to teach them English if they're not staying. I've been to Brook House and Tinsley House. They aren't pleasant, OK? Nobody expects them to be. Nobody cares.
I'm sure I've stayed in worst hostels as a student.
I'm not so sure. But I think that the problem is when you are detaining individuals is that you do have to do something to keep them occupied, otherwise they start beating.
Here's a book.
10 shades out of each other and
here's
the
a book. Here's a book. There's the telly. Off you go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we need to be giving them English lessons. I don't think we need to be giving them education. I think that you need to keep them occupied until you can get them out of here. But what we actually need to do is not having them there for very long.
That's the solution. What do you make of the announcement yesterday that from the 8th of January next year, but migrants coming to the UK will need to speak English to an A-level standard under tougher new rules, applying for skilled worker or scale-up visas for basic. You're basically going to have these standards. I mean, given that half of British students can't manage GCSE English, they can't. Genuinely, they can't. If you look at the stats, I struggle on some days, to be honest with you. I'm wondering, will they enforce that? What is A-level English standard? We'll see.
Well, that always tends to change as well, doesn't it, each year? And any A-level student will tell you that they have done the hardest exams ever, when the year before will say, no, it was...
Absolutely. I do want to touch on the China spy crisis as well, because it is turning into a bit of a crisis. We've got PMQs happening in a couple of hours' time. We will take the beginning of the exchanges with Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, and I'd be very surprised if she doesn't bring two things up. One, Keir Starmer claiming falsely that recognising a Palestinian state helped move the peace process in Gaza. And two, the incredible web of intrigue involving the collapse of this China spy case. Now, it's a difficult story because it does involve sort of a paragraph of explaining before you even get there, doesn't it? But we've got the extraordinary situation where everything that the government claims about why this spy case collapsed has been queried, questioned and debunked by either the current Director of Public Prosecutions, a former Director of Public Prosecutions, bearing in mind our Prime Minister is also one of those, the former head of MI6. We have now got two former Cabinet Secretaries who've led a civil service mutiny, it's been called, after Labour Minister Dan Jarvis in the Commons on Monday publicly blamed a named official, the Deputy National Security Advisor, Matthew Collins, for being responsible for providing evidence about whether or not the country views China as an enemy state for the purposes of this China spy trial against Christopher Cash and Christopher Berry, accused of passing sensitive intelligence from inside Parliament to the Chinese Communist Party. They have denied those charges. That case has collapsed. We've had every single claim that's been made has been poo-pooed. The idea that this senior civil servant would have made that decision without the political appointee that is Jonathan Powell, the actual National Security Advisor, having any say-so of it, why he didn't we appear to speak to the MI6 plus MI5 or anyone else, or indeed former security ministers, why he didn't rely on public statements that are very clear from all of these organisations stating what a hostile threat China was. But throwing a throwing a civil servant under the bus like that has not gone down well. So they've angered the team, the Crown Prosecution Service, the Civil Service, MI6, MI5, and pretty much everyone else. Keir Starmer is on very shaky ground here, isn't he?
He is, and it is a really complicated story. But I think what it boils down to is who knew what, when did they know it, and how many people were involved. Those are the kind of questions that we need to be asked. Dan Jarvis stood up, the Security Minister, in the House of Commons and said, this is, more or less a disgruntled civil servant made his own decisions.
He messed up, basically accusing him of messing up. That's what he basically did. But this guy's very well respected.
He is extremely good, I understand, at what he does, but he's also the Deputy National Security Advisor. So what happened to the Security Advisor? What happened to the top spokes at 5 and 6, and also the ministers? Well, we do believe that this has been done in a bubble.
But this is the thing: the idea that a case that involved national security, spying, alleged spying in Parliament, involving a country which we all know is a hostile nation state, an enemy state. The idea that would not have gone up to the top level, it's like, oh yeah, don't worry, leave it with Matthew. Matthew will deal with it. It's not a problem. Nothing to see here.
Absolutely
it doesn't
ridiculous.
fly. And the government's saying, look, we can't. Of course, we'll publish the evidence. Publish the evidence that you gave. And the government said, well, we can't do that. It's an ongoing case. Once again, the Crown Prosecution Service says, well, it's not an ongoing case. It collapsed because you didn't give us the information. It's your evidence. If you want to publish it, you publish it.
Exactly.
Government was saying they're not going to do it. Now we're told they might. There's no way in the world that Kemi Badenoch isn't going to bring this up. But is this story, for want of a better word, sexy enough to get people's imagination? We all know whether someone either was or was not at a party during lockdown.
Yeah.
Someone did or did not pay the tax they were due to pay on a property they bought, when the rest of us have to pay the stamp duty that still exists, unless or until Kemi Badenoch is Prime Minister, and 5 years after that finally abolishes stamp duty. There are stories which we can understand much more clearly. Whether or not the nuances of who said what when in an evidence for a spy trial about the status of our relationship with China, it's a bit more complicated. Do you think this could be a story that could bring down the Prime Minister?
I don't think it's going to bring it down, but I think it's going to add to it, because if you take it in isolation, I think most people would almost shrug their shoulders and say, well, it's a bit complicated and not really that bothered
turn
about
over
it.
the page.
But if you add it to an anti-corruption minister being accused of corruption, a housing minister not paying the correct level of tax, and, private school taxation, all of the other things, the taking of the freebies and all the rest of it, it starts to add up and it looks like somebody cannot do their job.
Absolutely. Oh, by the way, and Angela Rayner getting her £17,000 payoff for leaving as cabinet minister, severance pay. But even though she resigned because of wrongdoing, I'm sorry, you don't pay your full taxes. Sorry, love.
You don't get more.
You don't get more. But also, she railed against ministers who resigned for getting this money. But apparently, she'd have got this money. So unless that appears in a charitable donation publicly made, sorry, love, you are even more of a hypocrite than we thought you were.